Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So still on the share mode here, we want to be able to select these. And also on the share to specific people, we need to be able to add specific email addresses here for people, excuse me, that will have access to this thing. So just by changing this, we should be able to save something. So let me come back here to our function. So there's a send function here, new folder. We do send things here. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this new folder function like that. Okay, so I'm just going to call it share mode because there's show share file, or maybe let me call it share file like that. So that's what we're going to call it here as well, share underscore file. And what else? Instead of new folder, this one is going to be share, and this is not relevant at all. Class list hide box. Okay, text dot value, no. Okay, so here we're grabbing the share mode right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this one radios and do query selector for dot radio, because there are like 3 of those radio buttons, right? I just need to find which one of them is checked and then see its value. So let radios is equal to that, and then what I'm going to do is do a for loop. I'm going to do for. The order doesn't really matter, so we can go in the negatives. I'm going to do radios dot length, right? So for each radio, we're going to say here, let's do this. Let's say let share mode is equal to 0. So let's start with 0 there. And then I'm going to go if radios I dot checked like that. If it is checked, then radios I dot value is what I want. That's what I'm going to set to the share mode. So share mode is equal to whatever the value is of that checked input. Okay, then we hide the box. We do this. We don't need name here, we need share mode, and then let's give it that share mode value. And do we need a folder ID? Yes, probably we do, because we're gonna refresh the page after all of this. So share file is what we're doing. So after the share, we should still refresh the page. So when we send this thing here and we get a result, which is handle result, we still do table.refresh. So I think it's gonna work just fine. Now on the API side here, we want to, let me find the, let's say the new folder thingy. No, I think favorites. Yeah, the add to favorite part I think is more like what we want to do here. So I'm gonna duplicate this from the else to the next else, Control Shift D, and this one will be share file. That's the data type. Check if item already, this doesn't need to happen at all. So all I need is to know the user ID. No, the ID of the post. Do I need that? Yes, I need that. Did I supply that though? Let's see here. Nope, I don't seem to have supplied that. So this is why I should copy from the add to favorites, right? Yeah, let me find the add to favorite. Okay, so this is how we grab our ID. Where did we get ID from? Okay, we got it from there. So let me copy this whole part. And then let's go back to show share file. Let me find the actual function and then go up a notch to share file here. So let me do that. So this part grabs me the current ID, and I don't need this part. I just copied that to get to this part here, object.id. So actually, let me move these boys down here, like so. So let id is equal to that, and then object.id, we grab it from there, share mode, data type, share file. The share mode, we grab the share mode that we have. Okay, so things are looking up. So here we grab the ID and we grab the user ID, and then all we need to do is change the share mode. That's all. We need to update the drive, so we don't even need to check if this exists or not. No big deal. We just need to make an update and make sure that we are updating only because only the owner of the file can do an update. So here we're not setting favorites, we're setting the share mode to a specific share mode where user ID and ID is equal to ID. So that's great. And then here let's just grab share mode. We don't need to put a not there. We don't grab this from the raw, do we? We grab this from the post ID. So from the post variable, sorry, share mode, like that. So if it does not exist, put a 0. The user ID is there. We don't need this. We don't need that either. Yeah, that does it. Just that will do. Okay, so let's see if it works. This one, Pinocchio file, is not shared. So let's try and share it. I'm going to share it to the public. And things didn't go as planned. So let's go into the console.log to see if there are any errors, but it doesn't look like there are any errors. Let me refresh the page, shall I? And Pinocchio is still not shared. Not good. Not good. So what we need to do is we need to see where the problem is. So the first thing we need to do is check what the share mode is. So on this one, I'm going to do print readable, and I want to see what it says about the share mode. Right, so I'm going to remove that and do another share. Yeah, so now we get an error, but at least we see it says 0. That's not right. So it seems everything here is fine. It's just that the value does not come as it should. So this share mode here quite alright. So let me see what we have with object here. So I'm going to do a console.log of the object before we send it over, so I can see where the problem is. So refresh. Let's try this again. I'm going to remove stuff from there. Let's do a share to the public. Okay, so it first shows me the object, which is this one right here at the top. So it's got ID 7, share file, share mode is 0, 4.0. Okay, so the share mode here isn't really, so the problem is the share mode isn't being considered. So let me do a console.log of inputs just to make sure that it's not inputs, actually it's radios. I just want to make sure that the radios are intact, right? So let's, when we grab those radios, the radio buttons, that is. If I click, so the first thing is the radio button. Oh, I see. My bad, sorry. I forgot that when you're grabbing several items, it has to be query selector or like that. Okay, so I think that was the problem. We're grabbing one item instead of all three. So let's do a share to public, and there it goes. So it has worked this time, as you can see. I can share it to the public. Same thing with this one. Let's try and share to the public. Anyway, I should leave some not shared so that we can see how that works. This one, share to specific people. Yes. Yes, shared to specific people. So it is actually working as intended. Now, we need some restrictions when downloading the file. So, at this moment, everything can be downloaded when I preview like this, right? So there's a preview here. Before it loads the file, it has to know whether I am eligible to grab this file. So let's check out those rules, shall we? So these rules are in the API. So let's go to the preview file section, which is right here. So this is the part where it actually reads the info. Great, this is good. Now we must deal with the access issue here. So if access fails, then we empty the row here. So check file access, right? So here, if the file is one, first of all, we should know who the user is. So the user ID here is the one, the ID of the user that is currently logged in. Now, since it's possible to preview a file without logging in, it's very possible that this will not exist. So if it doesn't, let's put a 0 there, like so. So if user ID is not going to be equal to that, then we are in trouble. So let's look at the share mode first. So let's do a switch statement here. Okay, so I'm going to look at row share mode. So if the value is something like 0, case 0, if none of these is the case and it goes to default, we have to empty row. So this one right here, the one that is sent to the user, we have to set it to false. So I'm going to do that is equal to false. Now I think it's better to do this right at the bottom, right? Because then if we start setting values down here, it's not gonna be good. So we have to go to the bottom here, like this. Okay, so success is true here, but if things don't go well here, we might need to change it to false. So I'm gonna grab this like so and put it right there. So success becomes false and row becomes false as well. Okay, when things don't go well, that is. So I'm gonna duplicate this a few more times because we have a version 1. These are integers, so I don't need the quotes. Okay, so if it's 2, it's open to the public, so we don't need to do anything. Okay, or shared. Okay, so here we don't need to do anything at all. We just leave things as they are. And then if it's on here though, we need to check if the, let's see here, this is a private file. We need an if statement here. I'm going to do if row user ID is not equal to, can just do that, maybe that. If that's not equal to the user ID of the logged in person, then all hell must break loose. So let's hide that file. All right, great. Now what about case 1 here, shared to specific? Now if this is shared to very specific users, and the way to save this information for specific users is through email addresses, right? So all we need to do is look in the drive, in the users table, to see who owns those specific email addresses. Now I'm going to deal with this a bit later. For now, we just assume that it's shared and leave it be. Okay. All right. So that is great. I think that works. So let me come back now and let's give it a shot. So we have two files here. The first one is this image. Let me unshare this image. So share. Let's say do not share. So this one is not shared, but it's open here. It opens just fine because I am logged in as the owner. And now I'm going to share this Pinocchio file, which is shared to the public. Why doesn't it show MP4? MP4, oh, it loads here actually. Okay, great. Ugh, sorry about that. Okay, forgot that it can play. So here we have two files that the public one we should have access regardless whether we are logged in or not. This one we shouldn't unless we are logged in as the right user. So let's check out what's gonna happen when I log out. So let me go and log out here. So I'm logged out right now. Let's see if I have access to this one. And it says files not found. Okay, it's working. Very cool. If I go to this one though and refresh, oh, it also says files not found. So that is not good. Okay, so that's because we need a second if statement, right? So on this one in share mode, if it's private, for example, it means if the user ID is 0, which means the user is not logged in, even then we should have a problem. So no one should have access to private files that is not logged in. So we're going to say if user ID is equal to 0 or those two are not the same, it should exit. Okay. So share mode is 0. But what about if share mode is 2? Okay. So none of this should happen. But the reason it's not working out is because when we are reading the file, we are also looking at the user ID here. So we should just look at the slug by itself. So I'm going to remove that part there. That way we read any file whatsoever. Still, we are not getting these files, which is tragic. Okay, so let's see if there are any errors in our console, because that's also very possible. Okay, so we have seen that we don't have any errors. So select from drive where slag blah blah blah. Okay, so at this point I just want to know if row came back as something. Yeah, so I'm just going to echo this out, because I can't tell if it's the if statements or it's just that the file is not being found. If I refresh, it seems the file isn't being found, is it? Wait a minute, what's going on here? Yeah, so it seems there is nothing being found. Selector from drive where slug is equal to slug. Huh. Okay. Let me grab this. Oh, I see what's going on. Sorry, my bad. That's because let me grab this data type here. That's because we just exit when somebody is not logged in, right? So we should add this data type to this part here. Now, if we're getting, excuse me, here it omits if the data type is user sign up or login, these are omitted from being neglected here. Now I want to add a third one, which is preview file. Now, if I'm adding many like this, it would be better to just create a function, an array here that holds all of them together. So for example, user sign up, user login, and then finally preview file. So you can just add the one that you need omitted from let's be more descriptive. Works without login. Okay, let's say it that way. So if not logged in, we will do this, and then so info data type. Let's copy that. So in here we're gonna do and not in array. So the needle is what we are looking for. That's the data type. The haystack is the array itself where we are searching. So I'm gonna put that over here. Okay, so that's much better. Now you can add just more items to this array list that you want to work without a login. So with that in mind, we should have a file load here. Now there's a warning: undefined variable my drive user on line 19. Okay, so since we omitted that, we're having problems now. Session my drive ID. Okay, so get space for this one. I'm gonna put that to make sure if this doesn't exist is set to a 0. Okay, so I'm gonna refresh. Let's see what happens. Okay, so at least the file is loading, which means it will start playing momentarily. I will not click play here. So are we having any errors? No. I think that wraps it up. So we have the file here and it can actually be downloaded. This is great. But what about this one? This one is still unavailable, which is correct as well. Right? Very, very cool. So the public ones are available, the other ones are not. Okay, very, very nice. All right, so let's say I'm logged in as a different user. So let me log in as Mary here. Password. Login successful. Thank you very much. So I don't have any files in here, but I want to access somebody else's file and I'm logged in. So if I refresh, it still doesn't show. So that is awesomeness. What about this one? As well, does not show because it's private. Okay, so things are working as intended. So I'm going to log out, log in as my own user. And once I do this, now I should be able to see this file. Alright, so the share mode is working as intended. The only one that isn't working is excuse me, is the middle one here, the share to specific people. So how do we share to very specific people? Now the first thing we have to do is create a table, a new table that will store that information of who has access. And in order for us to know, we need to know the file ID, and then we need to know email address of people that have access to it. So if we go to our table here, I'm going to create a new table. Okay, this one is going to what we call it, shared. I don't know what you can call these tables. It's going to be shared to, shared underscore to. Doesn't matter what you call it, as long as you remember it. That's all. So here it's going to be the file ID, right? I'm going to do file underscore ID, and then email of the user that is allowed to share, to have access to that file, I mean. So email. So we know the file ID, the email of those people that are allowed to see it. Okay. Then let's put a disabled button here, just in case you want to disable this allowance. So I'm going to put this in a tiny int, length of 1, default value is 0, meaning it's not disabled, variable character 100, and the file ID is an int. That's an int as well for whoever is sharing. Let's make that auto increment in primary key, and let's save. So we have a new table now, shared to. Let's add an index for the file ID so we can easily find that. Same the email though, we just need to check within the, so we don't really need, we may need an index for the disabled part, and that's good. Alright, so in this table we're going to put access. This is where we're going to determine who accesses what when a user select this middle share to specific people. And then we have to make sure in this position here we can actually add email addresses to the list as we want and remove those we don't want. So we're going to make a small list here in the next video.